Michelle Shranker married a high-flying husband with the Midas touch.
He just took my breath away. I never met anyone like him before.
They were the couple that everybody wanted to be.
It was an ideal life until Michelle's husband did the unthinkable.
A lot of people are greedy, and they don't care who they hurt to get it.
The news was saying that he had faked his own death.
Michelle's husband was now a wanted man, and their marriage front-page news.
The story in itself is just so fascinating.
I was just like, I am in some sort of sick dream.
When it comes to love and marriage, things aren't always as they seem. Michelle Shranker is as pretty as they come. Growing up in Indiana, everyone knew that someday she'd make a beautiful bride.
Being raised in a Catholic family, you just didn't get divorced. I mean, when you were in a marriage, you were in it for good. So I was getting married once, and that was going to be it.
Michelle never expected to meet her match when she was just out of high school. But in the summer of 1993, a chance encounter at a local hangout changed her life forever.
Marcus was with a friend that I went to high school with, and he was very attractive. He just kind of caught my eye as I was standing there, and apparently I started staring at him, not knowing it.
For Michelle, it was love at first sight. And Marcus, a college student, seemed to feel the same. He literally swept Michelle off her feet.
My first date, he took me flying. I really don't even like to fly, but I liked him so much that I just went for it. It was a really exciting first date.
Marcus, an avid pilot, was determined to impress Michelle. And it worked. 2 years later, she became his wife.
I didn't have any wedding jitters, you know, like girls sometimes do. I knew this was the man I was meant to be with.
Michelle was always very, very devoted. She would just put him on a pedestal and really admired him.
It was the love of my life, and I just felt so at peace about it.
Once they were married, Marcus and Michelle lived life in the fast lane. Marcus landed a good job as a financial advisor at an investment firm. During his free time, he flew in air shows, performing death-defying stunts.
I would definitely say he's a risk taker. That's why I think we balance each other out. I'm more of, you know, the one that kind of settles him a bit and grounds him more.
By the late 1990s, the couple seemed to have it all. Marcus started his own company, managing million-dollar pension funds. Michelle was happy as a stay-at-home mom with their 3 kids in an affluent Indianapolis suburb known as Cocktail Cove.
Cocktail Cove was typically where the boaters on the lake tend to tie up on the weekends and party.
They had a gorgeous house. It was McMansion, I guess is how they refer to it. It had nice bedrooms, finished basement, movie theater. It was a really beautiful house.
In a place where appearances meant everything, the Shrankers seemed just about perfect. But behind closed doors, it was a different story.
He had a bit of a temper. It was a bit like walking on eggshells. Never quite knew who was coming through the door at 5 o'clock, so you just had to be prepared for it.
Even the Shrankers' nanny couldn't help but notice Marcus's mood swings.
He'd be happy one minute and then the next he'd be upset about the littlest thing. You know, he'd be trying to clean the garage. If the kids weren't right out there right away, he'd get upset and start yelling.
Ever the loyal wife, Michelle did what she could to keep the peace at home. But 10 years into their marriage, putting a smile on Marcus's face wasn't so easy anymore.
He had to be perfect, had to have perfect clothes. She had to be perfect. I think it was a lot of pressure for her. I mean, you've seen her, she's beautiful. And he would tell her that she was heavy, overweight.
There seemed to be no pleasing Marcus, who by now was spending little time at home.
You know, he would say he was going one place and go another. I knew something was wrong.
I could tell she was getting stressed. She kind of put on the fake smile when she was like, I'm okay, everything's good. But I could tell that it was getting to her.
By January of 2009, the Shrankers' marriage was already in trouble when Marcus announced he was taking a last-minute out-of-town trip.
He had come home Sunday and said he was going to visit his father down in Florida, which wasn't, unusual.
It was kind of like, okay, if that's where you're going, okay, see you later.
But this trip would be unlike any other. On January 11th, 2009, Marcus took off at 6:45 in the evening from an Indiana airport headed for Destin, Florida. By 9 o'clock, Michelle learned that Marcus never made it to his destination.
I got a call from a control tower, I believe it was in Alabama, asking for his cell number. They said they had lost contact. I didn't think much of it. I mean, it's not uncommon to lose contact.
But later that night, Michelle's phone rang a second time.
About 12:30, I got another call from the Air Force. That's when I knew something was really wrong.
Marcus's plane was nowhere to be found. And that was just the beginning of a bizarre story. One that would soon make the Shrankers household names. In December of 2007, a year before Marcus Shranker's mysterious disappearance, his wife Michelle had a sneaking suspicion he was up to no good. He was spending so much time away from home that Michelle began to wonder if there was another woman.
Something in my gut just said, this isn't right. Just something's not right about it. And that's when I started checking the phone bills. I started looking in just to see if I could find a similar number that was called over and over again. And I happened to find one that was called every day about the same time every morning and about the same time every night.
The phone number belonged to a woman who worked at the airport where the Shrankers stored their private plane.
When I confronted him, he said she was just a friend. Nobody talks to a friend for 2 months, 5 times a day, every morning, every night.
Michelle was determined to prove that Marcus was cheating. So she enlisted her nanny Rachel to help her do it. The other woman lived in Rachel's apartment building.
There were nights when he would not show up at home, so I would ask Rachel if she would look outside her window to see if she could see his car.
It was dark, so I couldn't really see anything. So I got in my car and I drove past and I saw his car. So I drove by a second time and then I drove by a third time just to make sure, because it was a very obvious car that I knew was his.
It looked like Marcus was a cheater. But Michelle, a devout Catholic, believed in for better or for worse. Determined to keep her marriage going, she demanded Marcus end his affair.
He said he wouldn't talk to her anymore. I made him make the call in front of me. And then he still continued to talk to her.
He would move out for a day or two and then he'd move back in, and then for a couple weeks it would be okay, and then it would blow up again.
After sharing her husband with another woman for over a year, Michelle finally had enough. She filed for divorce on December 30th, 2008.
I told him I would only do this so long, and I gave him a year. I was not starting a new year with her in it.
But the very next day, Michelle would learn that Marcus was much more than a cheater.
It was New Year's Eve, and I was still in bed, and my 6-year-old was watching cartoons, and he came up to get me and said, "There's a policeman downstairs that wants to talk to you." When I got down there, I was shocked to see this police officer and several other people behind him.
While Michelle's husband was on a tropical getaway with his girlfriend, Indiana authorities raided their home and Marcus's office.
They took all of our computers, a lot of old boxes that had files Marcus had kept in his office.
Marcus, the financial golden boy, was under investigation for bilking his clients out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. According to investigators, he had created a phony investment scheme called the Euro Fund.
I said, "I don't even know what a Euro Fund is. Just can you explain to me what a Euro Fund is?" And she said, "It's what your husband had clients invest in. And it doesn't exist, and now they're looking for their money."
We lost around $150,000. We were shocked because we had trusted him totally.
According to investigators, at least 8 lawsuits were pending against Marcus. If convicted, he could spend years in prison.
I had no idea what was going on. The first person you want there is your husband to fix it and to tell you what's going on. And he's sitting in Key West.
When Marcus finally showed up, he didn't have much to say.
He just kept saying, "Everything will be fine. It's a mistake. I'll take care of it."
But first, Marcus insisted he had to fly down to Florida for a last-minute trip to see his dad.
He dumped it in her lap and tried to take off and leave it to her to clean up the mess.
At 6:45 p.m. on January 11, 2009, Marcus took off from a local airport. Later that same night, Michelle received startling news. The plane he was piloting was missing.
He took off from Anderson Municipal Airport, which is just north of Indianapolis. He made a distress call somewhere over central Alabama to the FAA, said his windshield had imploded.
In response to the distress call, the Air Force sent fighter jets to search for the plane. And what they saw inside was mind-boggling.
They looked and did not see anybody in the cockpit.
A plane that appeared to have no pilot.
I was like, where did he go? How did he get out of the plane?
Where in the world was Marcus Shranker? Just 2 days after he was accused of investment fraud, Michelle Shranker's estranged husband disappeared into thin air. And the mystery surrounding his missing plane only deepened when investigators showed up at Michelle's door at 3 in the morning.
They came inside and said they needed to talk to me. They told me his plane had gone down, but that they were out looking for him because there was nobody in the plane, which I just found a little puzzling, but a little relief that there was still hope that he was okay.
Investigators had discovered Marcus's empty plane crashed in a swamp in Milton, Florida.
At first I was thinking, well, maybe he did hit his head and he's wandering around in the swamp, confused or hurt or something.
But what investigators found next told a much different story.
When he radioed the FAA, he said that his windshield had imploded, and when they later found the wreckage, they found the windshield of the plane to be intact. So it's pretty clear that that was a fake distress call.
Investigators were no longer convinced this was an accident. They began to wonder if the daredevil pilot had jumped out of the plane in mid-flight, leaving the airplane to crash on its own.
I was just like, I am in some sort of sick dream of something. What do you mean parachuted out?
There were a lot of things in his life that kind of all came down at the same time. And that suggests, I guess from a psychological standpoint, what would be his motivation for bailing out of this plane.
Could it be true? Had the embattled financial investor tried to fake his own death so he could escape mounting legal troubles back home?
I think that he thought that he was smart enough to autopilot that plane right into the Gulf of Mexico. He had already radioed in that the windshield had imploded and he was bleeding profusely. So if the plane goes down in the ocean, they can't find him, they can't find the plane. I definitely think he thought he was going to get away with it.
But that's not how it played out. Marcus Shranker was now at the center of a nationwide manhunt.
I know his world was caving in on him, but there's no way to get away with all of this. There's nowhere to run. It's all going to catch up with you. You can't leave 3 kids behind and your family.
Marcus was in big trouble and taking his family down with him. As soon as word got out that Marcus had disappeared, the Shranker's financial assets were frozen. Meanwhile, rumors were flying around Cocktail Cove. Everyone wanted to know if the woman who lived in one of the biggest houses on the block knew what her husband was up to.
I think the gut reaction with Michelle and Marcus is that they're both involved somehow. The image of this wealthy, beautiful couple living in a mansion-like home, you kind of assume that they come as a package deal.
After all, the stay-at-home mom was even listed as CFO of her husband's company.
I simply wrote out the checks. That's it. Writing out checks doesn't mean I know everything about what he was doing. I wasn't turning a blind eye. I wasn't doing anything. I trusted him. You're supposed to trust your husband.
And even though she lost $150,000, good friend Kathy Boone stood by Michelle.
She paid the bills and she raised her children. So it wasn't like she had hands-on. She was caught off guard as much as we were.
She was angry at him that this was going on, but she was also worried for his safety too, because he is the father of her children.
Michelle had every reason to worry about her husband. Things were about to get even worse.
And I just kept saying, it just doesn't seem like something he would do. Are you sure it's him?
On January 12, 2009, the search was still on for Michelle Shranker's missing husband. It appeared that Marcus tried to fake his own death by parachuting out of his plane in midair.
Who imagines in 2 weeks you're filing for a divorce, your house is being, searched, and then within another week your husband's gonna crash a plane? No one in their right mind can anticipate something like this happening.
She was exhausted. She wasn't sleeping because she had no idea what was going on, but she was trying to hold it together as best she could for the kids because she didn't want them to know.
Finally, the hunt for Marcus ended on January 13th, when the embattled financial investor was discovered at a local Florida campground.
We had the TV on and they said they had found him with his wrist cut in the tent.
He had slit his wrist in an apparent suicide attempt, and they basically found him in a pool of his own blood and took him to the hospital.
It just seems so sad and pathetic and just so lonely.
Marcus recovered from his injuries. On June 5th, 2009, he pled guilty to destruction of an aircraft and making a false distress call to the Coast Guard.
It was sad to me what he had become and where he was. I just wish he would have asked for help.
I think he was just way too far in over his head. And I think pushed against a wall, he wasn't gonna live like that.
In August of 2009, Marcus Shranker was sentenced to 4 years in prison. And his troubles are far from over. He still faces 9 counts of securities fraud.
You get away with things for so long, and there becomes a sense of power that, you know, you're invincible. And for a long time was able to get away with a lot. He took people's money and fooled a lot of people in the process.
No matter what anyone says, Marcus maintains he's innocent and plans to fight the charges in court. Ever since her husband turned their once picture-perfect life upside down, Michelle Shranker has struggled to come to grips with it all. She's now a working mom, trying to figure out how to make ends meet.
I know I can't carry this anger forever for him, for what he did. And I know I'll have to forgive him someday, because I can't carry this for me or my kids.
But it's hard to leave the past behind when so many still think you're in on it.
People who said they were friends of Michelle's and Marcus's stopped talking to her. They thought, well, she had to have known because that's her husband.
Well, you definitely learn who your friends are when something bad happens, and that definitely rings true in my life, in every sense of the word. I don't think anything bigger than this can happen.